Hi, this is Larry Bauer, Chief Executive Officer of the Family Medicine Education Consortium, and I have with me today Dr. Janice Nevin, who is President and CEO of the Christiana Health System in Wilmington, Delaware. And Dr. Nevin, thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you, Larry. It's a pleasure.
So we've known one another. I'm forgetting now if it was when you were a resident or early in your faculty career at Jefferson. But can you tell us something about your background? Where did you come from? What attracted you to a career in medicine? And what drew you to family medicine?
Sure. So I was actually born in England. My family is English, and we were immigrants. We moved here when I was 10 years old. And like so many people who came to this country, my parents chose to leave their homeland because they were looking for more opportunities, particularly for their 3 children. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And they came from a working class background, both very smart in their own right, but because of where they grew up, they were not afforded the privilege of higher education when they were young. Now, I'll tell you, my father, by the time he finished his career as an Episcopal priest, he had earned a doctorate. My mother, like so many young women back then, was encouraged to become a secretary. She was an outstanding secretary. In fact, when she retired, she was an executive assistant to the superintendent of a school district. So they had an experience that they wanted to be different for their children. And so we came really literally with suitcases. My father had the opportunity to be the Episcopal priest at a small church on the eastern shore of Maryland. We were there for about 3 years, and then he made a change to a larger parish in the state of Delaware. And that was the time I was entering 9th grade. And because he was making that change, he had the opportunity to meet the chaplain of St. Andrew's School, which at the time was an all-boys boarding school in Middletown, Delaware. But when he met the chaplain there, the chaplain let him know that the school intended to become coeducational in the fall. And he thought that it would be a very good idea if I looked at the school and I attended. And so I had the incredible experience of being one of 26 girls and 180 boys who were boarding at St. Andrews. For those of you who may not know it, it's the school that is the star of Dead Poets Society. And I share that story because in many ways I think it really was the beginning of my journey and my commitment, finding what I call my purpose and my passion in terms of making a difference for others. My parents always very committed to working in the community. As you can imagine, as the Episcopal priest of a parish, my father was deeply engaged in working with people. And my mother equally so, either through her work as the wife of the local clergyman, but also in other ways, working with the cancer community and working with other nonprofit organizations. So from a very early age, I understood that I was here on this earth to make a difference, to live with purpose, and to more specifically care for those who needed care, people who were more vulnerable, didn't have opportunity. And I think that, I talk about learning principles of social justice from my parents, and it's something that has been very important to me throughout my life. My experience at St. Andrews, I think, really reinforced some of those early thoughts about passion and purpose But it also helped prepare me for what was to come in terms of higher education. It was a fascinating experience being one of just a few girls in a mostly all-boys school. Given what I do now, I often look back and say that experience has prepared me very well for the experience I've had throughout my career, and particularly currently as one of very few women who hold the leadership role in a large health system such as Christiana Care. And I think it was at St. Andrews too. Well, I fell in love with both science and with history and the arts. And I remember at a very early age thinking that I wanted to pursue a career in medicine, that I wanted to be a physician, to some extent inspired by my best friend in England, whose father was the local GP. And then I had the great fortune of attending Harvard as an undergraduate, and struggled a little bit, to be very frank. I wanted to go into medicine because it was about, for me, it was always about the people and the opportunity to build relationship and make a difference. So I was a little confused about why I had to take physics and organic chemistry, which didn't seem to be people-oriented at all. So it certainly caused me to do quite a bit of thinking about, is this what I really want to do? But I was able to engage in some coursework around the history of public health, the importance of social determinants of health, and it really brought me back to thinking that yes, medicine was the career path for me, and it would give me the opportunity to really be part of a system that could make a difference for people, particularly those most vulnerable. I did take a couple of years off between college and medical school. I spent a year in England studying social and economic policy, specifically healthcare systems in other countries. And then I had a great year teaching algebra and geometry at an American boarding school outside of London. And those 2 years I wouldn't trade for the world. Lots of great life lessons, lots of wonderful travel, made some great friends, and again, I think were formative. Went to Jefferson, didn't really know about family medicine, but had the good fortune of picking a medical school that had and still has an outstanding family medicine department and an outstanding family medicine residency program. And so my early mentors were family physicians. I thought they were the smartest people that I met in all 4 years. And what I loved about family medicine was not only were the people that I met incredibly smart, but they were also very practical. So they really got to know the people that they were taking care of, and they made decisions that made sense for those people. So I loved the mix of the sort of intellectual challenge of family medicine, but also the very practical application of really what it means to take care of someone, understanding where they live, who supports them, what kind of work they do, what are some of the other challenges that they face. And so I fell in love with family medicine very early on. Attended Jefferson as a family medicine resident, was a chief resident, and then spent a couple of years in Pittsburgh doing a faculty development fellowship, earned my master's of public health there with a sort of an area of focus in community services, and then couldn't wait to come back to Jefferson. And I came back to Jefferson. I was hired on a grant, a HRSA Title VII grant, and I was tasked with introducing community-oriented primary care to the department. And so it was a great opportunity for me as I was sort of building or beginning my leadership portfolio to really have to start a new thinking, new programming, new systems inside the department. I also served as the assistant residency director, and then after 3 years, I became the residency director, and I loved that experience. I think for leaders, people who have aspirations to lead, being a residency director is wonderful preparation for just about anything else that you do. The opportunity to work with aspiring family physicians, to create programs, to support them, to understand the finances, to understand accreditation. It really was an opportunity to develop a leadership skill set that I think could be hard to come by in any other area. And then, to my surprise, this was now 15 years ago, I got a call out of the blue from the individual who had been the chair of the family medicine department at Christiana Care, and he let me know that he was retiring. He knew that I lived in Wilmington, Delaware, and was commuting to Philadelphia, and he encouraged me to take a look at the job. And my first reaction was, I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. I really don't think so, but thank you for thinking of me. But he was quite persuasive, and I came to Christiana Care and interviewed for that job. And I remember getting home that night and telling my husband, if I get offered this job, you need to know that I will take this job, because I had never been to an organization that so fully understood and expressed its mission. Every single person that I met during that first day talked about the mission, the importance of the mission, and it was really all about serving the community. And it was very impressive. And the other thing that was very impressive, with all due respect to those who are in more traditional academic institutions, people actually work together across departments to solve problems. It was an expectation. It was part of the culture. And there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about who got credit for the work or the outcome. The general sense is that we're all in this together, and if we're going to solve the hard problems, we work together, and doesn't matter who gets credit. The importance is getting the outcome that we want. So I've been at Christiana Care now for 15 years, and I will tell you, and I'll tell anybody that there hasn't been a single day that I've been here when I have been concerned that we as an organization didn't live that mission. And I think it's been a remarkable place for me, not only in thinking about what I started with and what I wanted to do early in my career, but also in terms of the opportunities that I've been afforded since I joined the organization. I think the other thing that was really compelling about Christiana Care is, we're a large community-based academic health center. We serve not only the whole state of Delaware, but the region around it. And because of our position and because of what we do, we have this great privilege of being able to make a difference to the health of all of the people who are here in Delaware. And I really valued that, the opportunity to engage very quickly with stakeholders, both from state government, local government, from nonprofits, business leaders around the state, to really make those kinds of connections and work on programs that have and continue to have the potential to really impact the health of Delawareans.
Can I interrupt you
sure,
for a moment?
Sure, sorry.
It's just wonderful to listen to your story. I hadn't realized that you originally came from England. That's really fascinating, what your path has been. Could you talk a little bit about being a leader, particularly as a woman in a leadership role? What do you find challenging?
So it's really interesting. I got an invitation earlier this spring to my 40th high school reunion. And there are all kinds of things that are wrong with that, because I think of myself as 30. But it really gave me the opportunity to reflect back to those days that I've described as, being one of a few girls in a school that had previously been all boys. So I will tell you, I look back over those 40 years, and I don't believe that there have been opportunities that I have not been able to access because of my gender. On the other hand, and I think I've been thinking about this more and more, particularly over the last 2 years in my role as CEO, gender makes a difference in terms of how you are viewed, the unconscious bias that leads to assumptions that may or may not be applicable, some of the challenges of not, having the opportunity to be at the table, but then really having to work to have one's voice heard and appreciated. So I think that, again, I feel that I've had opportunities. I've earned those opportunities. I think part of the work of leadership is to constantly, not constantly, but periodically to self-reflect, sort of go back to what it is what's important to you, what makes you authentic, what matters to you, what is your purpose, and then to understand that there are going to be some opportunities that come your way that may not be expected, but that you need to be able to see them and be ready for them, and to lean in and take them, even if you know that you may be taking a bit of a risk. One of the questions that I sometimes get asked around gender is there, have you always said yes, or are there times that you have said no? And there are some times that I have said no. I think there have been, not often, but one particular opportunity that came my way. I was being offered to me because of gender, and I wasn't convinced that it was the right opportunity. I did think that I was ready for the opportunity, but there were a lot of other factors that didn't, from my perspective, didn't make it feel like it was the right opportunity, and I said no to that. So, I do think there are some challenges that are unique to gender, and I do think it's important for women to lean in, to seize opportunities, to understand the impact of gender, and to actively work to continue their leadership journey.
So what might you say to people who are just beginning in their pathway of leadership? Any recommendations, suggestions for them?
One of the things that I talk about is building a portfolio, and again, it's having the courage to understand what are some of the things that I do well, and where are some of the areas that I need to grow, and then deliberately seeking out those opportunities that represent growth opportunities. So, for example, if someone in say a family medicine role here at Christiana Care comes and we have a conversation about their leadership aspirations, that's part of the discussion that we have. And then I talk to them about the importance of not simply looking at opportunities within family medicine, but can we get you engaged in some system-wide work or in a project that has nothing to do with clinical care, so that you get the chance to have a different experience in terms of learning, but also that you get known across the system, because those are the kinds of opportunities that will lead to other opportunities in the system that will help build your portfolio. The other piece is, I think, in that assessment, what are some of the other ways that you need to learn and develop? So as I was going through my leadership journey here at Christiana Care, I did some formal education. I did a year-long program at Harvard Business School. I did a 3-year fellowship with an organization called the Health Management academy. So in addition to some of the experiences that were outside my my comfort zone, for example, I was essentially ran operations for one of our acute care hospitals for about 5 years. I also did some very specific learning that was directly tied to those gaps that I felt that I had in my portfolio. The other thing that I think and I recommend, and certainly I've used and have had very good experience, is to engage coaches. So I have had a couple of coaches along the way, most recently an executive coach as I was preparing for the role of CEO. And I think coaches can provide that mirror that you need, but they can also then really help push you in ways that you might not normally think of pushing yourself, and that can really add value. And then the other piece is mentoring. From the very beginning, I have been blessed with wonderful mentors. Paul Brucker, who was the chair of family medicine when I was a student, a resident, eventually became the president of Thomas Jefferson University. He was an extraordinary individual and an extraordinary mentor. My residency director, Rich Wender, my fellowship director, Joel Merenstein. You know, it becomes a little bit more challenging after you're out of that that sort of pathway that we go through in medicine. So I have, again, been really fortunate in having people who have really looked out for me, both inside the organization and outside the organization, both men and women. And I still rely on mentors. You know, one of the things that I'm in the process of doing in my new role is what I'm calling cultivating a small peer group of women who are CEOs of health systems that can become peer mentors, a group that I think, you know, has a deep understanding of the challenges of running a health system, but then also, you know, brings the gender aspect.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed the opportunity to talk with you today, and I think your experience, you are really a pioneer, in my view, going back to high school and on to the work that you're doing now, and it'll be fun to see what your next steps will be. So thank you very much for talking with us today.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for the opportunity.